Welcome to Talkin Divorce with Don and Lori.
Are you a mandated reporter as in Minors Counsel?
No.
So you have a child that says, hey, dad's been hitting mom, in front of us, or, I noticed that mom's been sticking needles in her arm and, the house almost burned down or something like that. I guess your duty would be to go to the family court with an ex parte motion and handle it that way. Is that what it would be?
That's what I've done is what I can do and what I had to do in those kinds of situations is, yes, do an ex parte motion, which is something where you basically appeal to the court on an immediate basis and you say, we have a problem here, I need to get this to the judge right away. And the difference between an ex parte motion and a regular motion is an ex parte is heard like within days because there's an immediacy to it, there's a concern for health and safety, as opposed to a notice motion, which has you put on the calendar and it takes time and both parties get a chance to respond to it and come up with their argument. And the reason why the ex parte is so important is because we're saying something bad is happening here, the child's in danger, we need to get in there right away and do something about it. And I've had to do that when I've had a child take away from a parent because the parent is a safety issue or the child's in danger. I've had to do that when a parent has failed to follow court orders and it's causing problems for the child. It can be a drinking issue. It can be a drug issue. Anything you need to get the judge to hear and decide about right away.
So along those lines, drugs, alcohol, abuse, behavior that's addictive in nature, you got to hear some things when you're talking to your clients. Can you talk to them about like what your approach is and what's the likely thing you're going to do if you hear something that's disturbing like that?
Yes, okay. And I have had personal experience and cases where I've had to deal with this. And a lot of times when I get these kinds of cases too, I do some more research and I talk to therapists a lot of times to find out, how this could affect the child and what the ramifications are and the long-term effects and stuff like that, just so I can realize just how detrimental this is to the child. But one of the things that I've learned is that things don't just come out of nowhere a lot of times. Sometimes they do, but sometimes there's something happening, and either there's a parent that's alienating the child or saying something bad about the other parent, or something's happening the child is seeing something. And one thing that we have to remember is that the child's perspective is very, very important. We have to keep in mind that they may be exaggerating, have to keep in mind that, something happening all the time maybe isn't all the time. But you also have to consider that if a child thinks that something's happening all the time, they're affected by it all the time. And let's say it's only happening once or twice or something. To them, it's kind of rocked their whole world in a very negative way, and it could affect their relationship with their parent in a negative way. So maybe the parent isn't always late or always drinking or something like that, but it's really affecting the child to the extent that this is what's uppermost in the child's mind, and it's either going to destroy the relationship with the child. If there's alienation going on, it's going to destroy the relationship with the other parent. So even if it might be a little exaggerated or something like that, it's very real to the child. They don't just come up with stuff out of nowhere. And if they do, the way they're presenting it to you or talking about it, sometimes you can hear that, like they're using adult words or something.
And what emotional impact does it have on the child, and how can you see that when a child is trying to explain something? Like, are there any signs that give it away rather than just coming out and just saying it right up all up front? Because a lot of times I feel kids sometimes like to hide things. So are there any patterns that you see?
I look at patterns, but then I just look at anything too.
Okay.
And that's why I'm so glad I can talk to the schools and the therapists and everybody that's in their world, because there's going to be a clue somewhere. Either their grades are falling, they're acting up at school, they're bullying at school, there's suicidal ideation or actual suicide attempts. Maybe all of a sudden they've become more depressed or anxious. if there's something going on and they have a different relationship with a parent, it could be because that parent is doing drugs and alcohol. It could be because the other parent is saying something bad about them and trying to alienate them. So it can be a pattern, or it can just be anything that's maybe out of the norm or different from what they used to do, or how they used to act. Just looking at anything, and then it can be them telling you, I'm upset, I'm depressed. But sometimes if they don't tell you that, yeah, it's how they're treating their siblings, how they're reacting to the world around them.
So I know it does, how does your work intersect with a child custody evaluator? Because I would imagine sometimes you're both doing work on the same case at the same time.
Yes.
And so how does that work? Because you might not agree with the child custody evaluator, or the custody evaluator might not agree with you, or you might be in lockstep. You might be somebody the evaluator would want to interview.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
I mean, it's an interesting crossover, I think.
Right. The big difference is that the evaluator is an expert in other things. I might agree, I'm an attorney, but I'm not a therapist, I'm not a psychiatrist, I'm not any of that. So I don't have all these letters after my name that address child development and all this other kind of stuff. That being said, I do talk to, whether it's the child's therapist, or I do talk to a couple colleagues of mine that I sound off cases off quite a bit to kind of find out how things will affect a child in the future and why it's so important to take care of this now and to make sure that we address these issues. So what the child evaluator can do is they can do a lot of the same things I can do, and they do that, but they can, in my opinion, they can carry it one step further and kind of evaluate what is the best custodial plan for this child based upon their expertise as a therapist, psychiatrist, that type of a thing. The other thing that I kind of pride myself on is that an evaluator, they do this wonderful evaluation. They talk to all the peripheral witnesses, all the family members, the doctors, the health profession, kind of like I do, and they get all this information, but it's very expensive to do that, and the parties usually have to pay for that, and it takes quite some time to do that. And it's very important, especially when you're trying to come up with a custodial plan, because they have the expertise to back it up. Well, what I've learned and really tried to apply, because there was another time that you had Dr. Kieran on, who's an evaluator, and he was talking about how he comes up with his analysis and opinion and all this other kind of thing. And I really kind of took to heart the process that he did, because I thought, if I can do this when I'm talking to witnesses, when I'm talking to the other professionals, whether it be a medical doctor or a therapist or something, if I can offer some of this background factual information, but do it for a much lower fee than evaluator, because either you're paying my reduced rate as a Minor's Counsel, or I'm being paid under pay, so the parents aren't paying it. Maybe I don't have the expertise and the letters behind my name for that, but I'm providing a lot of the factual information to the judge, so a lot of that, so that information is available to the judge, and the judge can make that decision.
I see. And do you have any cases that are outside of the court, or not?
Like dependency court or anything like that?
I used to be a CASA when, after I stopped.
Can you explain what that means?
Oh, CASA, Court-Appointed Special Advocate. What it is, it's a program under the dependency court. So you have the family law court, which is when families are divorcing and they're trying to just determine, how to divide their assets and what to do with their custody and visitation of their children. Dependency court is when DCFS, Department of Children and Family Services, steps in, and a lot of times they intervene. They may take a child away, or they offer a lot of different services because a family is in crisis. And so when I was a CASA, I was, again, representing the child, and I would be representing, sometimes it would be a biological child of a parent, sometimes it would be a foster child. And it was basically, again, giving a voice to the child and, acting in their best interest, finding out all this background information. But dependency court is very, very different from family court. a case can be in family court, but if there's a problem, sometimes with drugs or alcohol, what happens is Department of Children and Family Services can step in, can take the child away, or can change custody, and then now all of a sudden you are in dependency court for a period of time, not forever, but you're there for a period of time. And on the one hand, they've got really good resources that are a lot of times free, which are very helpful to a lot of parents. But the other problem too is sometimes the child they're taken away and they're put in the foster care system. And we've all heard very frightening stories about the foster care system. So I would never want one of my children to be in dependency court, but it does happen.
Yeah, let's talk law a little bit. Okay, so what the court has to consider is 3011 of the Family Code first, and that's the health, safety, and welfare of the child. And that's going to include things like whether or not there's domestic violence, whether or not there's substance abuse, any type of inappropriate conduct with children, those type of things. That's the first thing the court has to look at when we're dealing with custody. Then it starts delving into like which parent is most likely to share, and things of that nature. Now, I know that you definitely focus on that first part of it right there, right? But it sounds to me like you could have a really good co-parent involved in one of your cases, and the child still wants to be with the one who might not be a perfect parent, but that's what you're going to advocate for because that's what the child wants, and you think that it makes some sense, I guess, right?
Sometimes you want to ask yourself, why does the child want to be with the other parent? And is it because the other parent's lenient? Is it the child just doesn't want to do homework, and so that other parent doesn't focus on the homework as much? Is the parent that they're not the unfavored parent? Is it because they're more they have more discipline,
More
or they're
discipline structured.
more structure. So and all this goes to the best interest of the child, because we want our children to grow up to be functioning, intelligent, good, thriving individuals. And if you've got a person or a child who's going with a parent who's not working on the studies, or is not have a structured schedule or something like that, that's not necessarily good for the child. The child's not going to may not be successful. So when we're trying to decide what is the best parent, we want to definitely try and get them both to co-parent and work together and support each other. But if one of them is not supportive of the other, if they always seem to be interfering, you can without calling a parent a monster or a horrible person. You can sit there and have, you have to go to your dad today, or we have to do this. Look, atone, or just acting like the other parent isn't capable of taking care of the child. All that sends a message is that this parent is not a good parent to you. And so you want the support of both parents, and you want them to work together, because otherwise that's the message that you send the child. And a lot of parents, they think, I'm not doing anything wrong, I'm not that bad. And you're like, yeah, you really are. When you're sitting there criticizing because maybe you're making a home-cooked meal and the other parent is picking up McDonald's every once in a while, that's not being a bad parent, that's just being different. But they will make little comments about how that parent is not doing all the things that I'm doing, and I'm doing this better, and that's
well,
not
it's also not just the parents. It could be the grandparents. It could be the aunts, the uncles, the cousins.
Yes.
It could be the family influence also on the child.
Right. And if you do have, when we have a lot of extended families here that are very active, and so a lot of times when I'm talking with the parents, I'm not just talking to the parents, I'm talking to the grandparents. I've talked to a lot of grandparents that are in the house with the children, so they're an integral part of it. And every once in a while, very, very recently, actually, I've had to address some grandparents that are causing problems. And they're either saying something negative about the other parent, or they're not a good role model for the child.
Yeah.
And so then we have to sometimes say, okay, well, grandma or grandpa's not going to be a part of this child's life, or you're going to have to move out or something. I've had to do that several times.
Yeah, sometimes
wow.
grandparents could be fuel the fire a lot,
Right.
especially with the pocketbook.
Yes.
They'll pay for whatever it takes, right? So one of the questions that I think that should be addressed is or maybe not so much a question, but we ask that you talk about your role as Minor Counsel that has a very unique part of the law that on one hand you're an advocate for the child, but you're also there to advocate for what's right for the child. So there is a distinction, and if you could describe that, and I think it starts with a child that wants to go in this direction, and you're going, whoa, that's really not in your interest, and you might advocate differently than what the child says.
And let me step back, because you made me think of something else too with that, is that one of the things that I try and do as Minors Counsel, and reason I meet with the parents and try to make myself available, is a lot of times I feel like I can educate them, okay? So sometimes we have the improper parents. So either one or both of them are not represented by an attorney, and they don't know what's going on. They don't know necessarily what the law is. And I cannot advocate for them. I cannot advise them, because I'm not their attorney, but I can tell them how the law works. And so a lot of times what I'll do with these parents is I'll explain to them, you know, we try and get to 50-50 custody, but you're both going to have to work together. If you guys both have 50-50 custody, the child has to go to the doctor or something. You can't always dump it on the other parent. You know, you both need to contribute to the child. You can't make one person do all the driving and you don't have to. You can't change the plans all of a sudden, expect the other person to just accommodate it. You can't say, oh, I'm not going to do the homework. They'll get the homework done when they're with other parent. So I kind of educate them on what the law is and what being involved, you know, whether it's 50-50 or the weekend or something.
It must be really hard dealing with people that I don't have attorneys.
Yeah, actually, sometimes it's easier.
Oh, wow.
It's easier, well, because then I don't have to fight the attorneys who are advocating for their clients. But
Okay.
a lot in educating a parent and saying, this is the way the judge is going to rule on this. If you don't want to follow what I'm saying the law is, if you want to sit there and make the other parent do all the homework, okay, go for it. Let's see what happens. And they'll find out pretty quickly that I'm right, and the judge is going to say, no, you're co-parenting. You have to do these things together. And so they understand that, and sometimes they just need to be educated. And a lot of times I think the judges like that, because I can educate the parents and a lot of times get an agreement between them. Then we just go into the judge and say, hey, we've agreed on something, and the
That's
judge.
really cool. So they're deferential to you, and they show respect, and you're influential. You just reminded me of that. I partake in the DSO, the Daily Settlement
Yes.
Officer Program. I haven't done it for very long, even though I've been practicing for a few years. What I find is that people they listen to you.
They
When
do.
you're the mediator. So maybe that's why, and maybe. In a way, you're saying it's a little easier without attorneys.
Right, and I'll even do it with the ones that do have an attorney, because sometimes I don't feel like they're getting good advice from their attorney. Some attorneys are great and wonderful, and they're very
She just pointed at me.
I know
Lori.
she did.
They're very child-centered. Others, and I appreciate that they're advocating for their clients, and that's what they're supposed to do. But in California, when we have a best interest of the child standard, that's what the judge is going to want you to do. And I think you're going to get more respect from the judge when you go in there and you're advocating for your client, but you're also being child-centered. But there are some times where the attorneys just are a little bit too much focused on what their client wants, and this isn't fair to my client, and they can do that. That's up to them. But I will try and educate them, and if they choose not to listen or follow what I suggest, then that's fine too. But they'll get the same speech from the judge.
Wow, you just shed so much information.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, I think that we could go on for about 24 hours right now, but we have to quit at some point. So I guess this would be a good stopping point. So one of the things I'm going to ask is that you'd please come back. I mean, this has been so good, and Lori and I are going to be fielding questions from our audience, and I'm sure they're going to
Yes.
bring you back in, and you could answer some of those questions. A big thank you, not only for being on our program today, but being who you are, you're representing kids. And I guess as a final note, did you get into this because you really love kids?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. Yes, thank you for having me. Thank you for wanting me back. I really appreciate it. I absolutely love children. I love children and animals especially. And I actually have a great relationship with my children because I've tried so hard to keep that good relationship. And the way I look at it, if you bungle raising your children, then nothing else you do is really that important. So that's my focus.
Do you have any advice? One final Karen Darling thought. Do you have like any advice after post separation for parents that are trying to do the co-parenting? Do you have any like rules or like a checklist or like any documentation that you give them to help make sure that everybody stays on path? Because I feel what you do is so important in the court, and especially for the child, that it's a shame if it doesn't stay fulfilled after the case is settled and you went away. So do you ever like go back and touch base with that child, or like how to, just real quick, because I'm so interested in that.
A lot of times, I have cases that I've been on for 7 years.
Ooh.
Yeah, and
Wow.
there's some that I've taken all the way through. I've gotten later when the child's been older, but they age out at 18. So it's not uncommon for minors counsel to be on a case, either to remain on or be called back many times throughout the process. And it's sad because it's indicative of a difficult situation, a high conflict divorce where the parents just can't get along. But I'm available to do that. The advice, the best thing I can just say to the parents are just you will destroy your child. If you fight too hard for what you want, or you demonize your ex, or you weaponize your child against them, you will destroy your child. You will hurt them. And sometimes parents don't see that because they think the other parent is so bad, or they're doing their child a favor by getting rid of the other person, or they just don't see the long-term effects. But that's another reason why I talk to the therapist a lot of times, because there are so many studies, there's so much research that will show that all of the foundation of a child's relationship and growth and societal development basically can be its family. And if you destroy that or cause trauma or difficulty in that, you've just really affected the best that your child can be. So, you love this person at one point enough to get married and have a child, and don't be so selfish. Think about what's best for your child and how you are hurting your child when you're hurting when you're saying something bad about the other parent or weaponizing the child against them.
Wow. Well, I hope a lot of people watch this program and hear what you just said, because that was more powerful than like those parenting classes you get online and things like that. So
Yeah.
Thank you. Maybe I should do one of them.
you should. Or maybe we should just put that snippet out there and send it around the world. So Karen, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yes,
Thank you
thank
for
you.
joining us on We're Talking Divorce.